Well, hello, welcome again to our reading of the Septuagint. We're looking at Genesis chapters 37 to 40, and we're in up to chapter 38. Chapter 38 sort of breaks into the story of Joseph. It's really an insert into the story to talk a little bit about Judah, who was one of the brothers of Joseph, and what happens later in his life. He is the fourth son of Jacob and Leah, and so we'll just continue reading this. Egenetot de enter Cairo Ekano, Katebe Judas, Apatona Delphanautu, Kai Ephicatot Hios pros anthropon Tina Ardolometain, Hoi onoma Iras. And it came to pass in that time, in that season, we're not told exactly what the time was, that Judah went down away from his brothers, and Aphicator from Aphicnaimi he went, Heos pros. This is an interesting expression. You do get this same expression in Luke, in fact, Luke 24:50, generally translated as far as. The Hebrew has from with, and the expression itself also occurs in Polybius, so it's in late Greek. So he went, as we would say, as far as a certain man who was a Adullamite, and they've transliterated the A as an O here, an Odolamite, but it's actually Adullamite in most modern versions. Hoi, for whom the name was Iras, so this is Hira in the Old Testament translations, Hirah. Kai Aiden Eke, Judas Thugatera Anthropo, Kananayu, Hoi Onoma Sawa, Kai Ela ben Autain, Kai Eselthen pros Autain. And Judah saw there the daughter of a man, of a Canaanite man, for whom the name was Sawa. This is Shua, it's normally rendered into English. Literally, and he took her, and he entered into her, that is, he had intercourse with her. Kai sulabusa etekon huion, kai ekalesen to onoma autu er. And sulambano, range of meanings, it often means to fall pregnant in Greek, in both classical and in Koine, and it's in the New Testament as well. So having become pregnant from sulam, eteken from tikto, she bore a son and called his name normally rendered just as er. Kai Sulambusa eti etekon huion kai ekalesen to onoma autu unan, and having become pregnant further, so we'd say again, she bore a son, and she called his name Onan, which we normally translate as Onan. Kai pros thesa eti etekon huion kai ekalesen to onoma autu selom. Aute de ein en kasbi heineka eteken autus. Now we get this pros thesa here. This is often used in the Septuagint when you've got an intensive verb in the Hebrew, but the Hebrew here is not intensive. The Hebrew simply says she continued and she bore. The Greek really means and having added further. So hard to translate it literally from the Greek, but might just use the Hebrew translation. So she continued further, and she bore a son. In other words, she continued having children, and she bore a son and called his name Salome, normally translated as Sheila, and she was in Kasbi, that's Kezib, when she bore them. Kai eleben Judas gunaika to prototoko autu hoi onoma dama. And Judah took a wife. Now this the name is just put in this form here. It's actually going to be a dative here. So he took a wife for his firstborn, the prototokos, with the protos and the tok is from that tikto, etekon, tetoka is the perfect. So his firstborn, for whom the name was Tamar. Egenito de prototokos Juda poneros enantion kuriu, kai apektinon auton ho theos. Again, we get some interesting variation here. So it came to pass that the firstborn of Judah, understand, was wicked. We're not told what he did, but he was wicked enantion kuriu, before Yahweh. Now here's an example of where we get kurios without the article, and the Hebrew here has Yahweh, as it does here as well, but we're getting variation. So interestingly, he uses theos, which is normally used to translate Elohim, but here actually in the Hebrew it's got Yahweh for both of these, just variation again. So he was wicked before the Lord, and God killed him. We're not told what he did. Apen de Judas to aunan eselthi prosten gunaika to adelphu su, kai cambrusai alten, kai anasteson sperma to adelpho su. So we have here a reference to what is known as levirate marriage, which seem to continue on. It's mentioned in the Gospels as well. So Judah said to Onan, have intercourse with the woman, with the wife of your brother. Literally enter into. So have intercourse with the wife of your brother. And gambrusai, this is a very rare word. It means to play the brother-in-law. And I mentioned that this is a reference to this levirate marriage, where if your elder brother had a wife but no children, and he died, and you were a male not married, then you married your brother's wife in order to produce children. So we get this funny verb here. A gambros is a brother-in-law, and we're getting this verb here formed from that. So play the brother-in-law to her, and anastason, imperative, raise up seed for your brother, literally. Gnus de onan hoti uk auto estai to sperma, agineto hotan eis eriketo prosten gunaika to adelphra tu, ex ekeen epiten gain, tu me dunai sperma to adelphu autu. Now here we get the practice of what became known as onanism, which you can put into Latin as coitus interruptus, later taken to refer to any form of male masturbation in which the seed is wasted. So Onan, having realized that the seed will not be for him, that is, it will not really be, he doesn't regard the child as his own, he would not regard the child as his own, egineto, it came to pass that when he was having intercourse with the wife of his brother, literally when he was going into the wife of his brother, ex ekeo, he poured out, understand the semen, epitangain, upon the earth, so as not to give seed to his brother. Poneron de ephane enantion to theou hoti epoieson tuto. And it appeared an evil thing before God. Now again, even though it's got Theo here, it is Yahweh in the Hebrew, before God, that he did this. So that he did this appeared to be an evil thing before God, kai athanatos and kai auton, and he put him to death also, from thanatoo. Apen de Judas tama te numphe autu, kathukera en te oike tun patrosu, heos megas genetai selom hopios mu. Apenga me poti apathane kai hutos hospe hoi adelphoi autu. Apelthusa de tema e kathe to ento oiko to patros artes. And Judah said to Tamar, his numphe, that is, here it's his daughter-in-law. A numphe is normally a bride, but here it seems to be translating a word meaning daughter-in-law. So sit, this is an imperative, middle imperative from Kathamai. So sit as a carer, a widow, in the house of your father, heos, until, now this was Sheila, until, this is the third son, so Sheila, my son, literally might become megas, might become big, i.e. until he grows up. For, he said, never will he die, never will also this one die, as did his brothers. And Tamar, having gone off, she sat in the house of her father. So Tamar gets sent back to live with her father until the other son is old enough to marry her. Eple thunthesan de he merai kai apethenon sawa he gune Judah. Kai paraklethes Judas anebe epitus kairontas ta probata autu, autos kai hiras apoimena autu ho adolomites es thamna. And the days, literally the days were filled. So time passed basically. And this is Shua, this is the wife of Judah. She died, Pethanin. Kai paraklethes, and Judah, having been consoled, this is from parakaleo, aorist passive participle here, he went up to the shearing, to those shearing his sheep. This is participle from kairo, to shear, to those shearing his sheep. He and Hira, the Adulamite, his Adulamite boyman shepherd, they went into Thamna. Kai ap angele thama te numphe autu legontes idu hopentherosu anabaine es thamna kai akerai ta probata autu. And it was reported, and this will be a dative here, to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, saying, so we get an impersonal form here, and then we get a plural here. So it was reported to them saying, behold, hopentheros, your father-in-law, pentheros is the word for father-in-law, you get penthera, mother-in-law, Anabina has gone up into Thamna, this is Timnah in the normal translations. Kairai, this is an aorist infinitive from kairo, to shear, so to shear his sheep. Kai peri elomene tahimatia tes kerusios, af hiates peribalete theristron, kai kalopisato, kai ekathisen prostais pulais einan, he estin in parodi Aidengar hoti megas gegonin selom autos de uk edo kenauten auto gunaika. So it appears that Judah reneged on his offer. So this is from peri-hyrio. The hell root is that aorist root from hyrio. Halon is the aorist. The root is hell. So it here has the sense of putting. It's a middle. It's to take from around. So remove garments, cast aside. So having cast aside the garments of her widowhood. This is slightly, I think this is a fairly rare word here. Kera is a widow. The kerusis is an abstract noun formed from that, third declension feminine. So of her widowhood from herself, and peribaleto, and she put on a theriston, to cast around herself, literally, so she put on a theriston, which appears to be a veil. The word only appears in the Septuagint. There is a word theristrion with a little iota in here, which appears in Theocritus, meaning a summer garment. Here it's probably something like a veil, I think is what the Hebrew says. Kai kalopisato, this is from kalopisdamai, to make oneself beautiful. This is a classical word, a late classical. It's in Plato and Xenophon. So she prettied herself up, and ekathisen, she sat at the gates of Einan. This is Enaim in modern translations, which is at the Parodo. This is the road leading to, from Hodos and Para. The road leading, so in the road leading to Thamna, that is Timnah. Aidengar hoti megas gegonen selom autos de uk edo kenauten auto gunaika. So she saw that this son Sheila, which is transliterated from Selom, but I think in most renderings it's Sheila. So she saw that Sheila had become big, he had grown up, but he, and that's referring back to Judah, did not give her to him, that is to Sheila, as a gunaika, as a wife. Gune means woman, but it can also mean wife. It's classical Greek and biblical Greek as well. The double meaning there. Kai idon auten Judas edoxen auten pornen anai. And Judah, having seen her, he thought her to be a pornen, a common prostitute. Now the word itself is connected with pernumi. It's an old Homeric verb meaning to sell. Here and later in verse 24 twice, the Hebrew word used is that of a common prostitute. There are several words for prostitute in Hebrew. This is tzoner. Interestingly, in verses 21 and 22, the Hebrew has a different word, a kadeshah, which means a holy one, referring to a temple prostitute. So it appears that Judah, well, it may be that we're getting it from two sources mixed together here, or it may be that Judah thought that she was an ordinary prostitute, a pornen, but that she had dressed herself up as a temple prostitute. Temple prostitution was apparently a common practice of the day, where union with the prostitute was meant to symbolize union with the deity. Anyway, so we'll continue on here. So kate kalupsatoga to prosoponautes kai uk egnoaten. For she had covered up, from kata and kalupto, she covered up her face, and he did not recognize her. ex eklinen de pros auten ten hodon kai epen aute iason me eselthen pros se. Uga egno hoti henumfe autu estin. Heidi epen tit moi doses eon es elthes pros me. So he turned aside from ek klino. So he turned aside from the road, understood, in her direction. Oh, here's the tain, hold on here. Yeah, so he turned aside from the road in her direction, pros autain. Or it could actually, that may not be right. He turned aside to the road itself. It could be with the autain going with the hodon to that very road where she was. So he turned aside perhaps to that very road and said to her, "Iason," imperative from eao, allow me to have intercourse with you. For he did not know that it is his daughter-in-law. But she said, "Tit moi doses, what will you give to me? If eselthes pros me, if you have intercourse with me. Hode apen ego soi apostello erifon igon ekton probaton." And he said, "I will send," this is the future here, you can see from the accent from apostello, "I will send to you a kid from the goats, from the, well, it's from the sheep, from among the sheep." Presumably he's got both goats and sheep in his flock. And she said, now we get this funny expression here, aeon dos, the dose here is probably an optative, could be a subjunctive here. It's a funny expression. It's something, the Hebrew word here means something like just if. We'd probably translate this into English as something like suppose that, or how about. So she said, "How about you give me an arabone?" Now an arabone is again an interesting word. It's possibly a Phoenician word, possibly from Hebrew. It means a pledge or a deposit. The Hebrew word is harabon. It's rare outside the New Testament. It does occur, in fact, a couple of times in the New Testament, 2 Corinthians 1:22, for example, where it's a reference to the Holy Spirit as a pledge of salvation. And it does occur in the Septuagint, but it also occurs in later Greek. It occurs in Plutarch and Aristotle, but it's a very late and rare word. Interestingly, in modern Greek, arabona is an engagement ring in modern Greek. Anyway, so if you will give me a pledge until you send, so we get 2 plus the infinitive here, so until you send, i.e. this kid. And that's the first part of this chapter, and we'll continue this in the next recording.